Ethan's consciousness wavered between reality and a chilling void. A cold breath lingered against his skin, whispering secrets he couldn't comprehend. When his eyes fluttered open, he found himself somewhere new, no longer in the streets of Ravenshade, but inside a place much older, much darker. The room was dimly lit by a single candle flickering on a rotting wooden table. Its frail glow barely pushed back the surrounding darkness. Shadows clung to the corners, stretching unnaturally, shifting like they were alive. The air smelled of damp earth and something metallic, something familiar. Blood. He tried to move, but his body refused to obey. It was as if invisible chains held him in place. The whisper started again, soft at first, then rising into a chorus of murmurs. The voices wove together, each one distinct, each one pleading. "Help us." Ethan's breath hitched. His heart pounded against his ribs. "Who's there?" A sudden creak echoed from behind him. He turned his head slowly, the movement sluggish, as if he were submerged in thick water. In the dim candlelight, a shape formed. A woman, her long, tattered dress sweeping across the dust-covered floor. Her face was obscured by a veil of matted black hair, but her presence was suffocating. "You are not supposed to be here," she whispered, her voice layered, like a dozen voices speaking in unison. Ethan's fingers twitched, regaining control. "Where am I?" he asked, his throat dry. The woman tilted her head, her hair parting just enough to reveal a sliver of her face. Her lips, cracked and colorless, curled into a ghost of a smile. "You are where they brought you, and you are where you will stay." The candle flickered wildly, its flames stretching unnaturally tall before vanishing, plunging the room into darkness. Ethan gasped. He scrambled to his feet, his body finally free from its invisible restraints. But the moment he moved, the whispers turned into wails. Light flooded back in an instant. He was no longer in the room. Instead, he stood in the middle of the Ravenshade town square. But it wasn't abandoned anymore. The village was alive. People moved about, their faces blank, their motions repetitive, like actors playing out a script they had long forgotten the meaning of. A woman swept the porch of a house with no door. A child bounced a ball against a crumbling wall. An old man sat on a bench staring at nothing. Ethan's stomach twisted. "This isn't real. You're wrong." The voice came from beside him. He spun to find Olivia standing there, her expression blank, her eyes missing their usual one. Mark and Sarah stood behind her, their faces equally void of emotion. Ethan staggered back. "You're not real. None of this is real." Mark's lips curled into an eerie smile. "Neither are you." A cold wind rushed through the square, and with it, the sky above seemed to darken. The villagers stopped moving. Slowly, in perfect unison, they turned to face Ethan. Whispers crawled through the air, surrounding him, seeping into his bones. "They are coming." The ground trembled beneath his feet. The shadows stretched and twisted, slithering toward him like grasping hands. Ethan ran. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get away. The streets twisted and warped, leading him in endless loops, the village shifting as if it were alive, trapping him in its labyrinth. Then he saw it, the church. Unlike the rest of the village, the church stood untouched, its tall spire piercing the storm-heavy sky. It called to him, a beacon in the madness. Without thinking, he sprinted toward it, shoving open the massive wooden doors and stumbling inside. Silence. The air was thick with dust, the pews covered in cobwebs. At the altar, a single candle burned, its glow flickering against the stained glass windows. And behind it stood a man. No, not a man. The figure wore the robes of a priest, but its face was wrong, stretched too long, its eyes black voids that reflected nothing. It lifted a hand, beckoning Ethan forward. "You are not the first," it rasped, "and you will not be the last." Ethan's breath came in ragged gasps. His body screamed for him to run, but his legs refused to obey. The priest thing took a step forward, then another. Ethan clenched his fists, forcing himself to move. He turned, reaching for the doors. They slammed shut. A laugh echoed through the hollow church, low and rumbling, reverberating in his skull. "Welcome home, Ethan." The candle on the altar snuffed out. Darkness swallowed everything.